you all for being so patient. You know, I work from home and sometimes the kids become a little erratic. But thank you everyone for joining. I see everyone's letting us know where they're joining us from in the chat. Appreciate that. If you also want to share a little bit about your business, I know this conversation's focused on starting your business. So if you feel like you want to share, please do. Um, okay. Oh, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. Let's see. All right, good to go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. As I shared earlier, my name is Elizabeth Cotton. I'm the executive director of Black Tech Link. We are a California-based nonprofit whose mission is to focus on the economic development of Black communities. And today we're hosting our workshop, Foundation for Success, Structuring Your Business Like a Pro. And just a little more information about Black Tech Link. We established ourselves in 2020, so this is our 5th year. Yay! Super excited for that. And so our organization is to focus on our mission is to focus on the economic development of Black communities. And we do that through a variety of programs. Program we do is like our youth STEM and robotics program, where we teach students in middle school and high school how to code. We also teach different STEM concepts such as like robotics, web development, hardware engineering, and geographical information systems development. We also do workforce development, so people that are looking for a job. So if you know anyone that's looking for a change in their career, we help prepare them to meet with employers, and we have a lot of industry partners as well, locally in California as well, and nationally too. So if you anyone you know that's looking for a job opportunity, have them reach out. I'll put my information in the chat. And then we also do small business development. Um, Right now, Black Tech Link, we are partnered with the State of California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development to provide a free consultation through a program called SB TAP. So a lot of people on the call, we may have consulted with you in the past. And this is all underneath like our own programs called Small Business Mastery, where we help small businesses, nonprofits build their businesses, helping them become more sustainable. So conversations like today is super important. Um, and then we also, like I mentioned, provide free consultation, whether it's focusing on fundraising, marketing, operations, licensing, things like that. Like we are here to help. So if you are a business owner that needs help with some area of your business, like please reach out to us. We have a form on our website where we offer these things. I can also put this in the chat. Let me see. Oops. All right. I will throw that link in the chat. But that way you can, schedule some time to chat with myself or another one of our consultants. Marissa Talbert is one of our legal consultants. So if you need support in your business and need like a legal question, we would most likely direct you to Marissa. So I'm really excited to have Marissa today. Um, in doing a lot of consultation, I meet with a lot of business owners that always ask the question, like, where do I start with my business? And I know it's very commonplace where a lot of startups, what they'll do, I've done it in myself in like another business I had like over a decade ago, but I feel like it's still commonplace where people go to the county clerk's office and get a fictitious business name. And that's where people are told to start their business. And so I wanted to provide, like, kind of expand on some other options for you before you go to the county clerk's office to register your business with a fictitious business name. There are some steps prior to that that I would hope everyone on the call consider today. Let's see. And then, let's see. And so today I just want to get started by introducing our speaker. Marissa Talbert is the founder and CEO of Talbert Law Office, a business and intellectual property law firm that serves entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and creators. Marissa is listed in San Diego Business Journal's top 100 leaders in law, top 50 women in influence in law, and top 50 Black leaders in influence. So she's kind of a big deal. Um, she was awarded the San Diego County Bar Association Outstanding Service by a New Lawyer Award and named to the National Black Lawyers Top 40 Under 40, Top 40 Under 40 Emerging Leaders by the San Diego Black Chamber of Commerce, and the Super Lawyers Rising Star Award for Intellectual Property. Furthermore, Marissa serves 14 years as a U.S. Naval officer and as past president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association, vice chair of the San Diego County Bar Association Intellectual Property Section, and advisor for the Law, Justice, and Technology Initiative at Cal Western School of Law. I give a digital round of applause for Marissa Talbert. And Marissa, I will let you take it away.
All righty. Well, again, it is fantastic to be here with all of you. As Elizabeth has already said, my name is Marissa Talbert. I am the founder and CEO of Talbert Law Office. And today, I know we're talking a little bit about structuring your business, but I want to kind of give you some overall tips in just getting started. And I want to answer your questions more, most importantly. So if you see me kind of looking down into the side, it's because I'll be looking at the chat to see kind of what you all are saying. I like to be very interactive. So I want you to talk back to me so that I can make sure that you came here and that you leave with what you came here to get. So how many of you already have a business? And how many of you are looking to start a business? Let me know in the chat. You have a business already. Or you're looking to start a business and you want to know where to start. What do we have going on here? Let me know. Okay. So we have a few people who's looking to start. We have someone who's already running a business. What about some of the rest of you? In the process of starting? Okay. So this is good to know because this kind of gives me a little bit of information about who's in the room. And I can then speak to some of the things that I've seen with some of my previous clients or people that I talk to all the time. So a lot of people who are starting their business or who have already started their business, they'll tell me once they get to me, I never even considered legal when I was starting my business. I just thought all I had to do was go get an LLC started, and I really didn't know where to go from there. And so what I like to tell people is, yes, you can start the business. As Elizabeth alluded to, you can even go to the county clerk and get um, your fictitious business name. But I want to kind of talk about what all of that really means practically, and some of the things that you should be looking for and thinking about as you move into either starting your business or at any moment when you're managing and running your business. So I will go ahead. Let me just ask you all, do y'all like slide presentations or you just want to talk? Let me know. This is you all are running this. Talk? You just want to talk? Okay, we can just talk. We can just talk. We got a lot of people. Okay, someone says slides. Okay. I'll do the slides. I'll do the slides. But we're gonna mostly talk because I'm not much of a slide person, but I have them in case we need them, and I do see some people saying slides and talk, so we'll do both. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so a little bit about me. I graduated from Baylor University. I am a native Texan. Um, and I grew up in a very small town called Carpus Cove, Texas. It's about an hour away from Austin. So I went to Baylor, got my degree in political science and economics, came through the Navy to San Diego, went to California Western School of Law after I got out of active duty Navy, and got my law degree from California Western, and then got an intellectual property certificate from UCSD Extension, which is the University of California, San Diego. I've been practicing now for 7 years, and I've been running my own business as an attorney for 6 years. So that is a little bit about me. If you have more questions about me, let me know in the future, email me. I'll give you all that information, but we're here to talk about business. So let's talk about it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is business entities or business structures that you may hear about. And most people are familiar with the LLC, right? That's what most people are used to hearing about. They're used to the LLC. When we're talking about getting a fictitious business name, I want to just talk about that really quickly. So when you go down to the county clerk's office and you get this FBN, fictitious business name, in some states, it's called a DBA, a doing business as. But when you go get this, you are basically saying that you are a sole proprietorship, which has no separation from who you are as a legal person. But if you are trying to start a business as yourself, right, with filing no paperwork, registering nothing, you're basically, the law requires that you have your full name in the business title. So if I was a sole proprietorship, my business name would have to be something like the law office of Marissa Talbert, because there's no legal separation from me. So when you go to get a fictitious business name, the FBN or the DBA, you're still a sole proprietorship that has now got granted permission to use a business name that is not your legal name. So maybe I'm a sole proprietorship and I don't want my law office to be the law office of Marissa Talbert. I want Talbert Law Office. I would go get a fictitious business name to be able to call my business Talbert Law Office as a sole proprietorship. Is that everybody understanding that? We good with that? And can y'all still see my screen? Okay, good with that. All right, so I'm kind of splitting the screen so I can still see the chat a little bit, but y'all can see that, right? Everybody's good? Okay, good. All right, so when we talk about a limited liability partnership, now in California specifically, hold on, there's a question that says, can I list with no name? Yes, you can list with no name. So if you're getting an FBN and you wanted to call it Blue Horses Crew, you can call your FBN Blue Horses Crew. But you have to get that FBN to be able to call it something other than your legal name if you are a sole proprietorship. Now, that does not mean that you cannot get a fictitious business name with these other entities, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, yes. All right, so with a limited liability partnership, specifically in California, limited liability partnerships are only for businesses that require some type of license. So you can only do a limited liability partnership if you're an attorney, if you're an accountant, if you are an architect. Those are the limited liability partnerships. You have to have some sort of license to do a limited liability partnership. And basically, that's just two or more people going into business together and they want to have kind of the style of an LLC, but they have this license in California specifically. California does not allow licensed professionals to start an LLC. So the option is to start an LLP. I hope that's pretty straightforward. Now we have the limited liability company, and this is the main one that everybody loves, right? This is the entity that most people hear about. This is the entity everybody talks about online. So let's talk about the limited liability company. It is the LLC, and the limited liability company is so popular for a number of reasons. It is popular because it gives you this limited liability protection. How certified? Wendy, Lisa, can you ask that question again? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. So can you clarify what you mean by your question? So back to the LLC. I'm sorry, y'all. So with the LLC, it is popular for many reasons. So you do get that limited liability protection, which means that your business is separate from you as an individual person. Now, there comes some requirements with that being the case. So when I talk about an LLC, what I want you to think is like you have yourself, whatever your name is. Let's just say you have Faye, you have Rocco, you have Hernandez, you have Marissa, and I am me, the individual. When I create an LLC, now the LLC's name is Lisa. So what happens is if something goes wrong with Lisa, Marissa's not responsible. Faye is not responsible. Rocco is not responsible. So if somebody sues Lisa, the LLC, they can't come after me personally. There's an exception to that. But generally speaking, that's why the LLC is such a popular business entity, because it separates your personal assets from the business assets. So when you create this business, you have to treat it like it's a separate person, because under the law, it is a legal person. Okay? Now, also with the LLC, it's easier to manage than, let's say, a corporation. So the corporation has some corporate formalities that you have to do every year. We'll get to that. The LLC generally is going to be easy for one person to manage. There are some requirements, like you want to have a business bank account, and you cannot commingle or mix together your personal and your business funds. So again, like I said, you have to treat your LLC like a person. So if you let Lisa borrow money, then you should expect for Lisa to pay you that money back. Okay? You want to make sure that if you borrow money from Lisa, the LLC, that you pay Lisa her money back. Okay? You want to make sure that when you're signing contracts for the business, you sign the contract as Lisa's manager, or as Lisa the LLC's principal, or as Lisa's owner, not as Faye, not as Marissa, not as Wendy Lisa. You do not sign in your individual capacity. Why? Because you want to make sure that everybody knows that Lisa exists. And if somebody has a problem with Lisa, they have to fight Lisa. They cannot come fight you. We got it? So when you do not do that, it is called piercing the corporate veil. When you mix your funds together, let's just say you pay your house mortgage with business funds, you allow room for someone to pierce the corporate veil. And what that means is that somebody can say, oh, Lisa's just the shadow of Marissa. They're not two separate people. They're using the same bank accounts. They're using the same funds. They're using the same everything. they're not really separate people. So now that person can ask for you to be held personally liable. So here's what you do when you have an LLC and you need to use funds. Let's just say you need to pay your rent. Then you take that money and then you put it from the business account. You do what's called an owner's draw, and you then put the money into your personal account, and then you pay your personal expenses from your personal account. You should never be paying personal expenses from your business account, and you should never be paying business expenses from your personal account. And when you file your taxes at the end of the year, anytime you took an owner's draw, that will be considered income, just as if you were working for another business, just as if you were an employee of someone else's business. That is income to you. So you then will pay taxes on that income that you used from the business.
Marissa, can I jump in really quickly?
Absolutely.
I see that Gigi Talbot has a question. How do you go back and separate the money if you've already been using it together? And so um, that's something that me personally, like I deal with constantly with Black Tech Link. And so Marissa mentioned something about taking an owner's draw. If you connect with a bookkeeper at the end of your tax, tax year, and you can separate like, hey, this is how much that I've spent on my personal expenses, they can like categorize that as like a owner's draw. Yes, yes, go back and reclaim it as a draw. And
Yeah.
so like that's something that like when I first started my business, that's something that I like dealt with, and a lot of business owners like deal with, and so that's something that you can discuss with a bookkeeper. We have a really great bookkeeper that works with us, and she's done a lot of workshops on commingling personal and business funds and how to separate that. And I can provide that information for you.
Great question, Gigi. And let me just go up back and answer Wendy Lisa's question. It is not only CPA and bar exam, but just the bachelor's degree does not require the LLP. That is not what requires the LLP. I think it's like 4 total. Architect is one of them. I know it's accountants, it's lawyers, and I think there's like one more, but you can go on California's Secretary of State website to see who is required to file for the LLP and who's not allowed to file for the LLC. But it's a very short list. I think it's 4, and I just named 3 of them. Yeah. Licensed psychologist, yes. If you are some sort of licensed medical professional, like a psychologist or a counselor or a therapist, that is one of the that is one of those that has to either file an LLP or some other entity. So like for me, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but like for me with Talbert Law Office, we are a professional corporation because we could not file as just a corporation. So yes, but all of that information, if depending on what entity you're interested in, you will find at the Secretary of State's website in any state. But for California specifically, you'll find it on the California Secretary of State website. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into these business entities. So with the LLC, it is like I said, it is easier to manage than most of the other entities, especially if you're managing this solo. It is different from the sole proprietorship in the fact that it does give you that limited liability bubble. Where, what does limited liability mean? Somebody tell me, what, in your words, what does that actually mean when it comes to your business? Anybody want to take a shot at that? Sue the business, not me, Gigi says. Identified by the state only. Those are great answers. So Gigi is definitely correct. Both of those are actually factual statements. Sue the business, not me. That's general. I am not liable for business activities. That is what that means. Limited liability. So when it comes to again filing that lawsuit, that person can only sue the business. That person can only get access to the business's assets. So that is what that limited liability bubble provides. And every entity provides a sort of limited liability bubble, except for two of them. Which two does not give you that limited liability bubble? Obviously, we've talked about one. Which other entity does not give you the limited liability bubble? Okay, we've got some answers in the chat. Sole proprietorship is one, and one has been mentioned. Dr. Perkins mentioned the other one, partnerships. So the sole proprietorship does not give you that limited liability bubble, and that is going to be basically the same as your DBA or your FBN. And then the partnership also does not give you that limited liability bubble just by itself. Now, there's different types of partnerships. We'll talk about that. So let's talk about this partnership for a minute. Okay, so you have a partnership. When does a partnership exist? Anybody know? Like, how do you form a partnership? What do you have to do? Yeah, Wendy Lisa has it. More than one owner. So a partnership exists anytime more than one person goes into conducting an activity for the purpose of making money. So if you have two kids in the neighborhood that get together to build a lemonade stand, they legally have a partnership. There is literally no paperwork required to file to technically start a partnership. The law is going to consider two or more people engaging in an activity for the purpose of making money a partnership. So I just want you to keep that in mind, because I see a lot of times where people start, doing some type of activity for the purpose of making money with a friend or a family member or something to that effect, and they don't think of it as a legal entity, but it is. And they have nothing in place, and they're like, well, we didn't file anything and we didn't intend to. It doesn't matter your intent. Legally, you have now formed a partnership. And when you form a partnership, that means that each partner is entitled to 50-50, 50% of the profits, 50% of the losses. I got a question here that says, I work with my husband, but I don't want to be a partner, just an owner. Is that legal? So if you are in California, California already considers married couples to be one. So he would already be your partner as your husband. I hope, yeah. Okay. So, so that is how you form a partnership. Both people, or all, however many people, are equally entitled to the profits and the losses. They are equally entitled to have the same amount of decision-making authority in the business, in the partnership. And we'll talk about that, but this is basically a partnership. Now, if you want to have some limitations in your partnership, then you can form what is a limited partnership and a general partnership. And normally this happens where You might have like a silent partner, somebody who, may invest some money into your business, but they really don't want to be involved in the decision making or the day-to-day managing of the business, but they're a partner for all intents and purposes of just because they, provided money, or they may play an advisory role. Then you can have like this limited partner, general partner kind of structure. But outside of that, and that's where you would file the paperwork. But outside of that, the partnership is built just from the activity, not necessarily from filing paperwork to create it. So the partnership and the sole proprietorship are the two entities that do not have a limited liability bubble. Okay, everybody clear on that? All right, so let's talk about the corporation. Now, the corporation is typically what you're going to see with kind of larger entities, larger businesses, larger companies. And a corporation is really the favored entity when you want to bring on investors. You can have a private corporation or you can have a public corporation. So if there is a company that you invest in with stocks, that's that's a public corporation. If you have just a small corporation, like I mentioned, Talbert Law Office is a professional corporation. We are privately owned. Most corporations in the United States are small, privately owned corporations. But the thing with the corporation is they have a lot of flexibility in the way that they can be structured, but they also have quite a number of requirements and formalities. So let's break down its flexibility before we talk about the formalities. With the corporate structure, there's generally two types of main corporations. There's a C corporation and there's an S corporation. The C corporation is kind of the big, broad corporation that you can have as many owners as you want. These are going to be what all of your public corporations are. All public corporations that you can invest in with stocks are going to be C corporations because they have no limit on the number of owners. And, when you're buying stocks, you're getting fractional ownership. The C corporation, the way that you can structure ownership, you can structure it at different levels, where different levels of ownership have different rights and different privileges, which is why a lot of investors love the corporate structure, the C corporation specifically, because you can have 4 different levels of ownership: level A, B, C, and D. Level A is for the founders only. I founded the corporation. I'm always going to be a part of it, even if I don't work in it. And I get to have all rights, all authority, all privileges. You may have someone who says, let's take Shark Tank for an example. You may have an investor who says, I want 20% ownership for $200,000 investment in your company, but you don't really want them to run the company. You don't want them to be able to tell you what to do. So they might have a level D ownership, where all they get to do is recoup their investment. They just get to make money off of their investment. They get to do nothing else. They have no privileges. They can't vote on anything. They can't make any decisions. They cannot be involved in the day-to-day. They can't tell your workers what to do. Those and you can get as creative as you want with these different levels of ownership. So that's generally the C corporation. Then you have an S corporation, and an S corporation is it's a type of, I want to say this in a way that makes it very plain. It is a type of tax filing, but it is also a type of entity. I want to tie the S corporation in a minute. So the S corporation, you can only have up to 100 owners, where the C corporation, you can have unlimited, as many as you want. S corporation, you're limited to 100 owners. They all have to be in the United States. With the S corporation, you cannot have a bunch of different levels of ownership in the same way. You can only have one type of ownership. So you can only have level A ownership. Everybody has level A in the company. We all have the same rights and privileges. You cannot structure it in that same way that you can with the C corporation. S corporations are usually good for like family owned businesses, or if there's a person that is just one person running the business and you want to be a corporation because maybe, down the line you may attempt to you may just want to do some different things down the line. The S corporation is usually good for that person. So I'm going to come back and talk about the S corporation a little bit more, but now that I've talked about, yes, that's what I was going to talk about, Elizabeth. I'm going to go over that and tie it to the LLC in a minute. But now that we've talked about kind of what the C and the S corporation kind of allow you to do, I want to talk about the formalities. So both corporations require that you have annual meeting minutes, which means basically you have an annual meeting with anybody that's in the company, all the owners, all the directors, officers, which I'll break down. And you have an annual meeting that says, hey, we spent this amount of money annually. We bought a new building, or we bought some new equipment. We decided that our budget is going to increase 10% next year. Whatever kind of your overall goals are, you have at least one meeting and you have to document what happens at that meeting and what you all agreed on. Now, the corporation also requires that you have a board of directors. Your board of directors has to include a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. The good thing is one person can fulfill all of those roles. So if you are the only person working in your corporation, you can be the corporation's president, the corporation's secretary, the corporation's treasurer. You can do all of it. You can be all of it. But you at least have to have it on paper that these are the roles in your company. And that has to go on your filings to the Secretary of State. And you have to update that every year. Who's your new president? Who's your new secretary? Who's your new treasurer? Me, I am. Or, I have Lisa, who's my president. I have John, who's my secretary. And I have me, who's my treasurer. It can be different people. It can be one and the same. So that's the good thing about the corporation, but they do require that those roles be fulfilled. Again, the corporation, no commingling of funds. So you do need to have separate bank accounts for your business accounts versus your personal accounts. I feel like there's something I'm forgetting, but maybe it'll come back to me. But those are some of the formalities that exist in the corporation that do not exist in the LLC. So that is why a lot of people choose the LLC over the corporation. There are reasons to choose that corporation. Like I said, it's a lot of flexibility in ownership, where the LLC does not have that flexibility in ownership. But a good thing to know is that you can always convert from one business entity to the other. So let's just say you start off as an LLC because that made the most sense for you early on. You grow, somebody wants to buy the business or somebody wants to invest in your business, but they want you to be a C corporation before they become an investor. You can convert your LLC to a C corporation. That's no problem to do. And so even if you start as one entity, down the line, it doesn't make sense for you anymore, you can easily convert that without having to dissolve the business and start it all over again. You can just convert and file the paperwork and convert it over. So that's good news. Now, It does not work for a nonprofit. A nonprofit has a completely different structure. A nonprofit is a corporation, but it has a completely different kind of structure from the actual corporation. Oh, that was the thing. Thank you. The corporation also requires bylaws, which an LLC does not require. So you have to prepare bylaws in your corporation, which is your governing document of how you're going to deal with issues. How many directors are you going to have? What's the maximum number? We're going to have a range of 5 to 10 and no more than 10 directors. We're going to have a range of 3 to 5 officers throughout the lifetime of the company. We are going to not allow for people to vote by proxy, which basically means in their absence, to have somebody else count their vote for them. Bylaws is your governing document for a different number of issues that may arise. And in a corporation, you also want to have a shareholders agreement. Even if you are the only owner, you want to have an agreement of that ownership that says, this is how somebody can buy stocks from me. Let's just say if I want to if another person wants to come in and be my owner, be a owner with me, how do they get stocks in the company? Because that is what ownership is in a corporation. You get stocks. How much money can I spend without needing a vote? So I write shareholders agreements all the time. And we put things in there like, you need 66% of the vote to spend more than $5,000 on this, or to spend more than $10,000 on this, or if we sell the company, how do we go about valuing what the company is worth? These are the 3 steps that we'll take if we don't agree. So those are the types of things that you would have in a shareholders agreement. So I knew there was something I was forgetting. It was the bylaws and the shareholders agreement. Those are also documents that are not required in any other entity. So again, that's why the LLC comes so highly recommended, because it just alleviates all of those other corporate formalities. Now, I do want to get to the taxes. As I was talking about the S corporation is what is considered pass-through taxation. So that is basically saying, although you have a separate business entity, the taxes that you file, you don't have to file business taxes necessarily. You're basically claiming, you're filing your taxes and claiming what you have used in your own tax filing. So let me break this down a little bit better. When you have a corporation, you're going to file the business's taxes, because remember, we had that's a different legal person. They have their own taxes to file, and then you have to file your taxes separately. Okay. When you have pass-through taxation, that is basically saying like, hey, I'm only filing one tax return, but I'm accounting for both. I'm accounting for what I received, the income I received, but also what the business received. And so it's a little simpler when you are doing pass-through taxation. And this is also allowed in the LLC. So when you create an LLC, you can elect to be taxed as a sole proprietorship or as an S corporation. Both are pass-through taxation. The S corporation, when you elect to be taxed as an S corporation, normally you won't elect to be taxed as that until you're making a certain threshold of money. And the reason why you'd want to be, I don't want to make this too confusing, but I want to give you enough information to kind of understand. When you're taxed as a sole proprietorship and you have a business, you're going to get charged what's called a self-employment tax or a self-employment percentage. That self-employment percentage is currently at 15.3%. Currently. So what that means is that all the money that the business makes, you're going to get taxed 15.3% of that because you're saying I'm self-employed. That is going to account for your FICA, your Medicare, your Social Security, all of those little kind of taxes that come out. But normally what would happen is your employer would pay half, and then you as the employee would pay half. When you're self-employed, you're paying the whole thing up front all at once. So they're taking that whole 15% and they're taxing you 15.3% on the money, the profit that you made in your business or by you. When you elect to be taxed as an S corporation, you only basically you pay yourself. That's part of it. That you have to pay yourself what's called a reasonable salary. That doesn't have to mean market value. That has to be what is reasonable for what you're earning. So a lot of my business owners, when they elect to be taxed as an S corporation, I'll tell them start paying yourself like $500 a month until you know what works for you, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, what I'm doing in my company gets paid $5,000 a month in my area. You don't have to do that. You just have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And you put yourself on payroll, and then you become an employee of your company. You get a W-2 at the end of the year, just like you would if you were working for any other employer. So what happens is your company, your business pays that half, that 7 point whatever percent. And then what you as the employee of the company pay or get paid, you're also paying that other half, that 7 point whatever percent out of your paycheck. So the 15.3%, half of it is coming from the business, half of it is coming from you, and your salary is now a tax write-off. So you get to mark that as a business expense. So that is why people like to have an LLC sometimes and elect to have it taxed as an S corporation, because when you pay yourself, it is now a tax write-off. It is now a business expense to pay yourself. But a lot of times you can't do that until you get to a certain threshold in your business. So I just want to tie the S corporation and the LLC in that way back together. Any questions about these different business entities? Let's talk. Any questions? What's on your mind?
I'm gonna also jump right in, chime in real quick. Thank you so much, Marissa. This is really great information. And I'm not sure if you mentioned, like, how do you file for an S corp? It is a tax document that you submit to the IRS when is that correct? It's a tax
Yes,
document.
it is Form 2553. That is the name of the form. You can Google that form, IRS Form 2553. And that is the form that you will use. It's like a two-pager. It's the form that you will use to send to the IRS to say, I want to elect to be taxed as an S corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly the threshold is, the rule of thumb is generally about $40,000 to $50,000 of profit. That's the rule of thumb. Now that's not that doesn't work for every business, but that's kind of the rule of thumb, Wendy Lisa. $40,000 to $50,000. Yeah. Okay. More questions before we go to the next thing. I want to make sure that wasn't confusing for anybody. I hope that was clear. Okay, we good to move on? The rest of this is downhill.
Yeah, and also know that you mentioned, like, I see the entities that you're speaking on. I don't know if you have any wiggle room to talk about nonprofits really quickly?
Sure. Okay. Let's talk about nonprofits. So nonprofits, since we have a generally, I saw a lot of people in from California. Um, I'll talk about California nonprofits specifically. So with the California nonprofit, there's two types. There's a mutual benefit nonprofit and a public benefit nonprofit. The mutual benefit nonprofit is a nonprofit that is geared toward the members of the nonprofit. So if you have a membership, maybe you have like a golf club, or maybe you have like a car club that does different things, but basically you hold events for your members. That is generally going to be a mutual benefit nonprofit corporation. The public benefit nonprofit corporation is generally if you're doing community-based events, you're doing community-based type of work. Maybe you are serving the unsheltered. Maybe you are helping kids, tutoring kids. Maybe you are, doing something that's very community-based. What the traditional nonprofit thought process looks like, that's generally going to be a public benefit nonprofit. So you have the mutual benefit nonprofit, public benefit nonprofit. The public benefit nonprofit is generally what you are going to file if you're looking to create a 501c3, which is where your donations are a tax deduction for your donors. So that's what most people think of when they think of a nonprofit. Oh, I can donate to this nonprofit. I can claim that on my taxes. That's not all nonprofits. That is a 501c3 specifically. So with the mutual benefit nonprofit, generally a mutual benefit nonprofit is going to be any other 501c that's not a 501c3. So there's like 27 different kinds of nonprofit recognitions. There's a 501c4, C6, C27, C7, C8. There's so many. Anything outside of a 501c3 is generally going to fall within the mutual benefit nonprofit corporation. So those are the two in California that you can file for. So you'll start with filing with the California Secretary of State, one of those two. Once you have filed that paperwork with the California Secretary of State, you then will go to the IRS and you'll say, hey, IRS, I'm doing this great work, or I'm doing something very cool in my area. I think it's so cool. You should allow us to be tax exempt. Now, there is a specific, I would say, specific criteria, obviously, to be considered tax exempt. For a charitable tax exemption, basically you have to be serving the poor or the distressed, something educational, something religious. You're basically doing a function of the government's job for them. And that's why they're saying, okay, because you're helping us serve the unsheltered, or because you are helping us, educate children, which is the government's job. They're saying, we're going to reward you by not, by not imposing taxes on you. The 501c whatever is the section of the tax code that creates that entity. So when you hear 501c, that is the IRS designation. That's the federal designation. That has nothing to do with the actual state. That is the federal designation under the IRS, because that is the section of the Internal Revenue Code that creates that entity. So the 501c3 is based on section 501c3. 501c4 is based on section 501c4. So you have these different entities. Anything outside of a 501c3, any donation to a different 501c is not tax deductible. The 501c3 is the only 501c that is tax deductible for the donors, okay? So you file your paperwork, public benefit, mutual benefit corporation with the California Secretary of State. Then you file what is called the 1023 form. If you're filing for a 501c3, you're filing the 1023 form with the IRS. If you're filing something other than a 501c3, then you file the 1024 form. So you have either the 1023 or the 1024 form with the IRS. You file that with the IRS. And then specifically in California, you also have to request to be tax exempt from state taxes. So you then have to file a form. It is Form 3500 or 3500A, which is the short version, with the California Franchise Tax Board. So you say, hey, IRS, I'm doing this great work. I'm helping these kids read. Like we do tutoring. We help them with math. We help them with STEAM. We help them with whatever. This is so great. It's helping the public. We're doing such a great job. You should make us tax exempt. Then you come back to the state and say, hey, state, the government, federal government, IRS said I can be exempt from taxes. You should allow me to be exempt from taxes too. So you file for state tax exemption. Again, that's the Form 3500 or the Form 3500A. The difference between the two forms is if you've received your tax exemption letter from the IRS already, then you can file the 3500A. That's the short form for the state tax exemption. If you haven't received your letter from the IRS saying that you're exempt, then you'll file the 3500 that says, hey, it's pending, but I think it's going to come through. Just want to let you know. And I want to start this process early. So you file for state tax exemption with the California Franchise Tax Board, but also you have to file and register with the Attorney General's office. So there is Form CT1. That is how you start the initial registry with the Attorney General's office. You say, hey, I'm a charity, I'm a nonprofit, I'm letting you know this is a requirement. And then every year after that, you have to file two forms. Well, you have to file more than two forms. You have to file your annual taxes. And every year you have to file with the Attorney General's office Form RRF1, which is the renewal, and then Form Form CT-TR-1. And that is basically your treasurer's report every year to the Attorney General's office. So that's kind of generally the makeup of becoming a nonprofit, specifically in California. And then you have your, like I said, you have your annual filings, which are your tax filings, both federal and state, those renewal registries with the Attorney General's office. And then every other year, you'll have a filing with the Secretary of State's office to file your statement of information.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions about nonprofits specifically? It's completely different from the regular business entities. In California, the nonprofit is the most regulated entity. It is more regulated than any for-profit entity. So please know that they watch nonprofits like a hawk. Also, nonprofits do require bylaws. They require a lot of formalities. So just be prepared because the nonprofits do have a lot of requirements that go along with starting and maintaining your nonprofit status.
Mm-hmm.
Additional questions about that? Elaborate on the formalities. Okay, so let me think. So when I am filing a nonprofit, generally we will have our first meeting minutes. I will provide first meeting minutes. So you have to have meeting minutes. Let me backtrack. Let me start. You have to have a board of directors in a nonprofit. You need to have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer, at least. Your president cannot concurrently serve as your secretary or your treasurer. But The person who serves as your secretary can also serve as a treasurer, vice versa. It
Mhm.
just can't be the president that's serving at the same time. So you need at least those three roles filled: president, secretary, treasurer. You can have additional board members. Most people do. Um, in the nonprofit, your board cannot be more than 49% interested. What that means is that by law, if you have people who are getting paid who are on your board, you need it can only amount to 49% of the board membership. So if you have 5 people on your board and 3 of those people are being paid for whatever reason, you're out of compliance. That's 60% of your board that is interested, which means they're getting some financial benefit. So you have to make sure that your board is in compliance with that. The other thing is that you have directors and officers on your board. They may overlap, they may not, but generally your directors cannot be paid just for being a director. Your officers can. So those 3, president, secretary, treasurer, those are officer roles. They can be paid just for being on the board. They don't have to be. But your directors, your board of directors, they cannot be paid just for being on the board. Generally, they can be paid for providing an additional service. So let's just say you have a director who also does graphic design for the organization, and you pay them for the graphic design work. That can be okay, but you can't pay them for just being a director. So let's talk about, like I'm saying, the formalities. You need bylaws. You need meeting minutes at every meeting. You have to have at least 1 meeting a year. Most nonprofits have, upwards of maybe 1 a quarter or 1 every month or 1 every other month, something like that. But every meeting requires meeting minutes. Those are legal documents. You have to be very careful with how you use money, and uh, that can get really sticky really fast. Um, you have to ensure, normally I like to provide what's called a bank resolution, because you got to make sure that you have the right people on the bank account, who's allowed to sign for the bank account. And banks are really strict on nonprofit bank accounts. So you want to have something in writing that the board has approved to say who can sign for checks on behalf of the nonprofit organization, who can withdraw money, who has access to the bank accounts, why do they have access. Normally it's the president and the treasurer. A lot of times you want to have um, uh, 2 signatures on each check or on each, kind of financial document, so that not it so that there's some redundancy and not only one person who has access. What else? You just need to make sure that you're including your board, because your board will be held responsible for the decisions that they approve. They will be held responsible. This is public people's money in most cases. And so any person of the public can ask to see your documents, can ask to see your records at any time, because you are owned by the public. A nonprofit has no owner. You are owned by the public. So the law says any member of the public can come and ask you to look at your records, and you have to provide that to them. So you want to make sure all of that is in order. I'm trying to think. I see so many things with nonprofits that I'm trying to like kind of generally think about the main kind of ones that come to mind. Um, Mainly
Um,
keeping up with the minutes and resolutions when you're making a decision with your board.
yeah, absolutely. When
Things
you,
can
when
get
you go
sticky.
to, yeah, when you go to start a nonprofit bank account, they're going to ask you for these items too. Same with any type of business, to show like, hey, are you really in business? Like, show us your articles of incorporation. Show us your bylaws. Show us your, you know, banking resolution, as she mentioned. Like they're gonna want to see that you are doing business. Um, and I want to take this time really quickly because we only have like 20 minutes left. I really would like to share like the state of California website. A lot of people may not be familiar with navigating the Secretary of State website, where a lot of these entities that you'll file through their website. So just really quickly.
I'll stop.
Um, okay. So this is the Secretary of State website. And if you guys don't know, Secretary of State Shirley Weber, it's from San Diego. Shout out to her. And I'm going to share this link in the chat. All right. So this is where you would begin to start a filing, or you could do it the easy way and connect with Marissa and she'll do it on your behalf. Am I saying that correctly?
That's
um, Make it easier on yourself. Um, so you would go to business and you would go to business entities. The Secretary of State office processes filings, maintains records, and provide information to the public relating to business entities. That includes corporations, limited liability companies, limited partnerships, general partnerships, and other business filings. So this is where you would go. And so there's a lot of options through, I think it's called Biz Online. And sometimes you can file your business online um, through this. So, like, I think we're talking about starting a business entity. So you would go to form a business and business entities. So here we would go to register a business. And there's a lot of things you can do to see like, oh, is my business already like have a business name? So one of my clients, I think he may be on this call. Um, let's see. You can reserve a name. So these are some of the options that the state of California like provides for you. So there's articles of organization, LLC, if you're doing initial filings, stock corporations, as she mentioned, like if you're filing a corporation, general stock, as Marissa mentioned, she's a professional corporation. So if you're a professional business, and there's different types of corporations that you can file. There's also benefit corporations. So I would, you know, take time, schedule some time to chat with Marissa to determine what type of corporation, if you're looking to go that route. There's also nonprofit corporation filing. So how do you start a nonprofit? Well, you would um, either complete like a mutual benefit. We talked about if it's a membership type, or you would do a public benefit. My organization, Black Tech Link, we're a public benefit. We are we're a nonprofit that serves the community. So we're a public benefit. Um, and then there's other types of filings, limited partnerships, and those are some types of and then this one's different. Co-ops. So if you want to start like a co-op, I know that's one area of business that we do want to provide more information on, and we'll probably do that in a later workshop. But co-op is also another type of business as well. And so you can also search. Let's see, Omar's janitorial. I'm just putting one of my clients' information in here. No results are found. So most likely you can utilize that name in California, you know. But Marissa can talk more about trademarks and all that good stuff too. It gets even deeper. But this is where you would ultimately start to file your own business. Okay. And let's say I want to file a LLC or like a basic LLC. It says it'll give you the processing fee at $70, and then you can file it online, right? So you would have to kind of register with Biz File Online. You can get your information and you can just start filing right there on the spot. Or if you want like a little more like hand holding with a legal professional, I would say connect with Marissa and she can direct you or do this service on your behalf. So I just really wanted to provide the website sos.ca.gov. That's where California business filings, you'll go through that. Unless you're a sole proprietorship. Am I saying that correctly? Yes. Sole proprietorship, you won't necessarily, and that's, doing business as yourself or doing business as yourself as something else, like a fictitious business name. So, yeah, I'm going to stop my share. And at this time, I know someone also asked for tax preparer information. So I use H&R Block. There's a really great uh, tax preparer. Her name is Patricia Hoggard. I've been using her for years, and I'm going to put her information in the chat as well. I don't want to sound biased, but I found like some of the best tax preparers for my small business have been at H&R Block. But that's her direct email. They make it pretty easy. Um, and so, yeah, and I also put my bookkeeper. So what my bookkeeper does is they do all of my like books. They clean them up, do my reconciling, prepare my financial reports and statements, and then I give all that information to my tax preparer, and it makes it easier for her to file my taxes. So, if you don't have a bookkeeper or a tax preparer on your team, I would suggest connect with one. You're more than welcome to connect with some of my uh, people that I use. And I can also send over when I follow up with everyone after this workshop, I will send over some of the previous webinars that they have done. May fill in the blanks on some of the things that Marissa was talking about, like information about like owner's draw or how to file like for an S corp through taxes. That I know Patricia talked about that, and so I can share all that information with you all directly. Um, so at this time, we have about like 15 minutes left. I would like to invite like the all of our attendees into the hall, and feel free to ask Marissa questions directly. We call this segment of our program Talkback. And so this is a great opportunity for you to just share a little bit about your business that you're looking to create. Um, you know, if you're looking to raise funds, uh, what kind of, I know a lot of people that reached out to me is like, oh, I want to fundraise, I want investors. Well, to get investors, you need a certain type of business to get investment, you know? So I see Gigi Talbot has raised your hand. Please feel free.
Thank you guys for having this wonderful, informative session today. Well worth the time off my calendar and everything I was doing. It was a really good distraction. My question is, I work with a group of small business owners, and one of our newest questions is about people having a for-profit and a nonprofit running parallel. Apparently there's some funding benefit to that. Can you speak on that, Attorney Talbert? And then can you also say where's the best place to look for information? Because I'm sure it's not social media or just a plain YouTube search. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Just quickly, really quickly, I just want to answer this question in the chat about what is a co-op. A co-op is basically a business where there's members and the people who are members are also the owners. So you're basically kind of like, let's just say you run a remote or like a soup kitchen or a coffee shop. You might be like a person who goes into the coffee shop, but you're also like a part owner, or a grocery store. You're a person that shops at the grocery store, but you're also a part owner. So a co-op is basically like a group business model where every person has membership within the group, but is also a partnership and an owner in the company itself. So that's a co-op. So back to Gigi's question, yes. So it is. It has become much more popular for a for-profit and a nonprofit to work together. While a for-profit cannot own a nonprofit can own a for-profit. Sometimes you'll see where there's two separate entities working together, one for-profit and one nonprofit. And sometimes you'll see where they've combined themselves as what's called a social enterprise. So that is like where you have a business that has a nonprofit purpose, but a for-profit business model. So if you want more information about a social enterprise, I have some videos on it that I can link in the chat, or you can email me directly. We can talk more about it. But generally what's happening is you may have this nonprofit where, or you may have a for-profit, but you may not be making as much revenue in the for-profit as you want. But some of the revenue that you want to make, you then put into the nonprofit. It's a tax write-off, obviously. And then the nonprofit is kind of doing some of the general community work that can get funding, can get government funding, that kind of supplements the for-profit. In example, a little different, but kind of in line with the idea. I am a co-founder of a nonprofit, and I'm a co-founder of a political action committee. The political action committee is not tax deductible. We run political campaigns through the political action committee, but people who donate, they cannot write that off in their taxes. We also have a for-profit that supplements the work that we do in the PAC. So what we do in the nonprofit is we do a lot of the educational part of like planning and prepping for the campaign. We educate the community. We do voter registration drives. We do different like education about different legislation that's happening in the city of San Diego. And we get, funding for that where people can write that off. And then that further supplements the work that we will then come back to do when it's time to change legislation. And we need to run the political campaign through the PAC. So you might see where there's this kind of like for-profit, nonprofit, they supplement each other, they complement each other. But you can get a lot more funding with a nonprofit entity and with nonprofit recognition. But then you still have some things that only the for-profit can do. And then that for-profit can then also donate funds to the nonprofit to, write some of that off. Now, one thing that you need to be mindful of in doing that is there is a test that the IRS will look at when you file your nonprofit taxes. It is called, now it's eluding my mind. I can't think of the actual name. It'll come to me. But basically, it's a test where they're going to check to see if you are competing with a for-profit. So if you're doing activities that a for-profit can do, then they're gonna look at this test. It's the commercial something commercial test. Gosh, why is it? It's gonna come to me before the end of this. But anyway, it's the commercial something test, and they're going to look at are you competing in any way with a for-profit? Because if you are, then they're going to claim some of that revenue as what's called unrelated business income revenue, and then they will tax you on that. So I'll give you an example. I once had a client who wanted to Their mission was minimizing the wealth gap, and they wanted to basically kind of start a bakery that would teach job skills to young marginalized communities within young marginalized communities, and use the bakery to, you know, teach life skills, teach job training, and that sort of thing within the nonprofit structure. And they were not really, they were going to charge nominal fees. They weren't going to charge the same fees as a regular bakery, but I had to like warn them against the possibility that if we filed the application with that intent in there, that it may not get approved, because they were going to be seen as, you know, as competing with a for-profit, because they're kind of doing the same thing that any other bakery could do, and teach job training and teach job skills, even though they had a particular targeted audience in mind. So those are some things that you just want to think about. But yes, for-profit and nonprofit working together is a great idea. It works very well. You just have to be very organized in doing it so that you make sure you're not crossing over those fine lines that each entity is responsible for. So Ray asked about fiscal sponsorships. Yes, so with a nonprofit, being a fiscal sponsor, there's a lot. If you are going to be a fiscal sponsor for nonprofits, there is a lot that goes into that. One thing you want to make sure is that your contract is tight and your contract says exactly what you are providing as the fiscal sponsor. In most cases, there's different types of fiscal sponsorships, but in most cases, the fiscal sponsor is going to provide all the accounting. They're going to be the one that file the tax documents for that entity that they're sponsoring. They're going to provide all the administrative support, and they may provide, you know, some other skills or some other assets that the nonprofit needs. So but the biggest thing you want to make sure of is that you, one, have the capacity to fulfill what you say you're going to fulfill as a sponsor, and that you have a tight contract that completely outlines exactly what the roles and responsibilities are. You want to make sure that if you're sponsoring a nonprofit, that you know exactly what documents you need from them, exactly what kind of, you know, documentation, how frequently you need that documentation from them. Because let me tell you, most nonprofits who need a fiscal sponsor, they need one because they are not good at managing the details. They're not good. A lot of nonprofits who already have their 501c3 status still need fiscal sponsors because they don't have the manpower and capacity to really maintain and manage their funds, their records, their admin. And so they use a fiscal sponsor for that. So you're relying a little bit on what they provide you. And so you have to just be clear on what you need from them, how often you need it, whether it's a quarterly report or you need them to report back after every project, or what that's looking like. If you're on the flip side and you're looking for a fiscal sponsor, you just want to make sure that you're looking for a fiscal sponsor who can provide you what you need. You need to be clear on what you need and make sure that you find a sponsor who can provide that, because there are different types and everybody doesn't always provide the same types of services. You want to make sure that they are going to be the person that's filing the tax returns at the end of the year, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about recording and managing those funds. You want to know how they're going to earmark your funds and how often they're going to provide you access to your funds. You want to make sure that you understand the process on how to get access to your funds based on the different types of projects that you'll be taking on and how they're going to present to the public, who's donating to you, like that they're the fiscal sponsor, or does the public think they're donating straight directly to you as the nonprofit organization. There's just a lot of details in there that you want to make sure of, but it's a very common setup. It's a very common relationship. But the contract really is the thing that kind of hammers those details out, and you want to make sure those details are clear.
And I also provided some links to like fiscal sponsors directory. So when I first started my nonprofit, before I got my 501(c)(3), before I had anything, I wanted to first see if what I was doing was viable. So I didn't necessarily want to get the whole 501(c)(3) just yet until I knew what I was doing. And sometimes grassroots organizations beginning projects, they'll use a fiscal sponsor until they determine if this is something they want to proactively keep doing. And I actually found like my first fiscal sponsor on a couple of the websites I just provided, where some fiscal sponsors, they say, okay, for every dollar you bring in, I want 15%, or for every dollar you bring in, they want 5%. And that's also sometimes what a fiscal sponsor will say. It's like, okay, we're going to let you use our 501(c)(3), like our trusted brand, our trusted, uh, you know, just organizations that have built trust in the community. They have, if you say, hey, I'm a new business that provides, let's say, HIV testing, a company or, nonprofits never heard of you, or grant makers never heard of you, but they have heard of Red Cross, and you can say like, hey, we have the Red Cross as a fiscal sponsor. Then the American Red Cross is a trusted nonprofit brand, and so they'll most likely give you the money because American Red Cross is a fiscal sponsor to you. I don't know if that makes sense. And so if you are looking for a fiscal sponsor, just check their credibility, make sure that they filed they're compliant, they filed their 990s each year, things like that. Um, and so yeah, I would say if you are like have a project in mind, check out fiscalsponsordirectory.org and see who's willing to uh, let you utilize their 501(c)(3), um, to move your project forward. So it is 1 o'clock right now, over past 1 o'clock. This is such a good conversation. And and then I see Pamela, she used a fiscal sponsor for the start 2 years, and it does help, as you're getting everything together and building. So you don't have to take on that liability and responsibility as a formalized nonprofit just yet. But I want to say thank you so much to Marissa for this really great conversation. Marissa, please put your information in the chat. I know a lot of people are going to want to connect with you to start, your business. And Marissa is she's one of our consultants through our SB TAP program. So please feel free to reach out to her. She's able to provide some free consultation um, when she gets to start writing the bylaws and filing for you. There may be a fee associated with that. But initially, she's able to help direct you if you're looking for a DIY type of do it yourself, filing of your business. She's able to help direct you. When you start asking her to do it for you, then there may be a small fee. But for the most part, she's able to provide free consultation. Please also, I did put in here. If you're looking to chat more about your business, please schedule some time to chat with us. We're here for you. We offer support in financing, marketing, exporting, business development, fundraising, all those types of things. So again, thank you all for your time.
And can I just quickly just add this before we go? We did not talk today about contracts or intellectual property like trademarks and copyrights, but those are also things that are all a part of almost every single business and nonprofit. So if those are some of the things that you're dealing with or have questions about, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about those things as well.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Yes, and we do have an upcoming workshop. Our next series of workshops will focus on real estate. We're working with an organization called SoCal PPM. So if you are a business owner that owns real estate, manages real estate properties, we'll have like we have a great series coming up over the next couple of weeks, 4 workshops. And that may be, if you're looking to become a real estate owner, for utilize that as a small business. Um, these are some great workshops we have coming up, and we have all of you guys' contact information. You will be receiving a survey, so please let us know how we did. And thank you again so much for everyone for joining today. Awesome.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Thank you.